Welcome to She Loves the Grid, where we discuss all things F1. Whether it's happening on the track, in the paddock, or beyond the grid, we'll talk about it all. And here we go for our first summer version of She Loves the Grid. So how you doing? Hi, Diane. I'm Claire. Here we go.
Here we go. I can't believe waking up this morning. There was no race. I thought about that yesterday.
I know. I was like, am I forgetting something? No. But then as I was like scooting down my hall going, oh, it's the summer. And we're thinking of the name of the episode. I was like singing Will Smith's Summertime kind of thing. Summertime. I'm like, but it's freezing here for me. So it doesn't feel like summer.
Oh, no. Well,
for those who are
like hockey sticks.
I'm in a long sleeve shirt, and I took off my coat that I'm wearing indoors because I'm so cold. Because they turn the heaters off, the oil, the heating to preserve the energy and all that citywide. Yeah. You can't really use your heaters during the day, and it's cold. I will do the math because it'll just make it easier. But it is 1.8. It's 64.5 degrees right now.
Oh my goodness. Evening. Yikes.
Yeah, it's cold.
Yeah.
For me, that's cold. Anyway, how was your week?
It was good. It was actually good. I don't know. Lots of exercising, I suppose. It was National Oyster Day yesterday here. Maybe all over the world. I don't know. And my brother owns a seafood restaurant, so met my sister-in-law and my niece and nephew, and went and had some oysters.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. Who watches from the Phoenix area, it's an amazing restaurant.
High Tide Seafood Bar and Grill. It's amazing. It's always packed. I think by the time we got there at 4, they had already, I think just that location, because they were doing it at all 3 of their restaurants, had sold more than 800 oysters. And that was 4:00, and it gets busy after that. So I know they had reservations, and then they had openings after 8 p.m. So crazy. So if you're there, go check it out. Went for a walk one morning and turned a corner and kind of ran right into a coyote. So that was the joys of, going for morning walks in the desert. He's a young little guy, but I ended up turning around. They're not aggressive. They're very skittish. And so I think we kind of surprised each other, but he kind of turned around, and then you could tell he wanted to go the direction where I was kind of coming from so he could get back probably out to the desert. So I just turned around and went the other way so he could do his thing and move on. You could tell he was just kind of like, okay, I don't want to go that way. I want to go that way, but I don't want to pass her. So
they're surprisingly very big. When you finally see them, they're surprisingly tall, coyotes.
Oh yeah, they can be. They always look skinny, and I just thought, because so many people walk their dogs early in the morning here because it's so hot, you cannot walk your dogs on the pavement probably after like 9 a.m. And so initially I just thought, oh, somebody's dog got off. And it takes like a split second, but that was my initial thought, is you see this movement and it's like, oh, somebody's dog. And then, nope, not a dog. And then y'all just missed it. But I was telling Claire, I had like 30 or 40 quail just go across my front window here, all heading one direction. So yes, the joys of desert living. What about you? How was your week?
It was good. Very busy as always. Discovered that I have some flexibility in exploring and maybe moving to another area of Germany or south of Berlin or something. So I'm excited by that. Because, of course, we first moved here because it's very English speaking. But as I'm learning German, it expands my horizons and places to live. Because I'm living in a furnished apartment because I didn't want to move all my stuff here. But now that we're here, the bed's not super comfy, and I would like to get a more comfortable bed, and then I can get into a more cost-effective apartment. So we're starting to do that look.
That's exciting.
I'm excited. So
that's
excited about that. And freezing.
Yeah. Yes, I'm trying to empathize with that. I wish it was colder here. I
I,
kind of wish it
but I
was
did practice my German now twice. When the place that I go to for brunch for UF that you've been to, and then I met a colleague who was here from Great Britain for lunch, and one of my other colleagues, and a lady and her husband, older couple, stopped to talk to my dog because
yeah.
my dog is so cute. And they started asking me questions about her in German, and I did not ask them to speak to me in English. I just spoke to them in German. I was quite proud of myself. So
That's amazing. It's paying off.
it's paying off just in 2 weeks. So not going to try it yet here because I'm not that fluent, but I can talk about my dog.
There you
All right,
go.
we'll just keep going. It's going to be a fun one. We've got, like you said, some recaps, a little bit of stuff going on now, and then we go into some nostalgia. So it's been a fun 12 hours or so, though I wasn't feeling well last night, so I didn't do as much. I started, kind of, we'll talk about rewatching the Netflix show just to see what it looked like now that I know more. So that's been kind of interesting too.
I think that was such a good idea. Okay, so this week there's a lot of rumors going around, and it seems like this year the rumors are all pretty much coming true. So some credible sources, a lot of F1 writers, journalists are mentioning these things. So we're going to throw it out there. So for Alpine, we mentioned this last week. The rumor was going around that former Ferrari principal Mattia Binotto was on the short list to replace Omar at Alpine as their new principal. And supposedly they've reached an agreement, and he is going to join the team just before the Italian Grand Prix. So he won't be at the race at the end of this month, but supposedly will join the team just before the Italian Grand Prix. I guess they'll go principal-less for until then. I don't know how that works. They'll just have the other guys on the pit wall and probably I don't know if they replaced the sporting director because they got rid of him too. So anyways, I don't know. Mattia could be back. I think a lot of people seeing what Ferrari is doing this year is kind of like, maybe Mattia wasn't the problem. So it fired him. So he might be back on the grid. Another rumor going around, Checo supposedly has a clause in his contract that if he has a 125-point deficit to Max in the championship standings, that could kick in a salary reduction in his contract. And right now he is at 125 points. So I don't know if we'll ever hear the truth to that. I'm sure Checo's not going to come out and say it, and Red Bull's not going to come out and say it, but that could be kind of interesting. That came from a journalist.
You wonder something like that. Like, if it's true, who knows? And then opens their big mouth. Because, like, I have confidentiality clauses in my work contract. Yeah. And, like, who opened their big mouth and then let that loose? Like, it's just... Because, granted, everybody says... I shouldn't say everybody. I hate when people do that. So, anyway... A lot of people have to sign confidentiality clauses.
Yes.
A lot of people, I'm sure, with their spouse or their partner will loose lip things, but who opened their mouth to whom and it got out? This
I'm going to give you one guess. It's Red Bull. I'm going to give you one guess who opened their mouth and shared that with somebody. Chatty Cathy. AKA Helmut Marko. Is
it just to piss off Checo? Now that I'm rewatching some of that show, I have some different thoughts on Checo anyway. So you think it's just to piss him off? So he'll want to leave?
I don't know if it's to piss him off. I just think that Helmut Marko can't keep his mouth shut, and he is out there talking to every podcast and publication that he can, and he probably let it slip to somebody. This is the deal.
Maybe he just DGAF. Who knows?
I think so. I think it goes back to what we said earlier. He's 80-something years old. He's either senile or they're sending him out there to spread this kind of information to maybe make, Checo not look so good or to get info out there. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Who knows?
I'm just saying. But speaking of that little chatty Cathy, AKA Helmut Marko, After the Austrian Grand Prix, I talked about how he was on I think it was a podcast at that time, and he talked about there would be a name change for AlphaTauri next year, and that they were going to follow the Red Bull car design as much as regulations would allow. So this week, a couple things came out. Supposedly, Helmut Marko, oh my gosh, Hugo Boss is going to have the sponsorship, / naming rights for the car next year. So it's obviously no longer going to be AlphaTauri. It could be Hugo Boss is the name of the team, which to me, I think is kind of funny because clothing designer, and back in the day, they used to have the Benetton team, which if you grew up in the 80s, you always wanted to shop at Benetton. Like that was like the coolest, most, awesome place ever. So I think it's kind of funny that could be coming back. Somebody said a reported name is Hugo Boss Bulls Racing. Like,
I knew that was coming. Why did I put water in my mouth? Because I almost choked on it.
So they're supposedly going to tell us in September. So we only have, hopefully a month to wait till we find out what the name's going to be. But we'll keep you posted on that. But what I think is kind of interesting is that Hugo Boss, I swear, they just signed Fernando Alonso.
They did. And they sponsored them. In fact, when I've done surveys, when I enter to win things at Aston Martin, they ask you if you recognize Hugo Boss as one of the sponsors because of Alonso.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that, I don't remember what his contract is, if he goes through next year, if he's done this year and they can pick him up again. I don't remember, but I mean, we can start some conspiracy theories with that if we want to. But the other rumor with this is that they're saying that AlphaTauri is going to run the RB19 next year. So basically, I don't know how the rules work. In the past, they used to take old Red Bull parts and use them in their design for the AlphaTauri. But it sounds like their plan is to just take the RB19 from this year, and Adrian Newey will do whatever he does for, I'm assuming, what will be called the RB20, and they will take it and send it to AlphaTauri, and then all the races are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, Red Bull and AlphaTauri.
Okay.
Can you imagine?
If they do that, if they move the RB19 down to whatever the AlphaTauri team is going to be, that will be interesting, especially if Danny Rick stays with them and then whomever else is there, because that'll be what I've said this year. If you put a different driver in that car,
right,
a capable driver, what would you get? Because that's part of the problem. It's part of the problem is Max, granted, is a good driver and one of the best. I can't say he is the best. He is the best driver in the best car.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of one. It's the strategy, it's the car, and the driver. It's the combination. And so if you put Max in the AlphaTauri, he would not win like he wins right now. He would win a lot. He would win a lot more than Yuki. He would win a lot more than some of the other drivers, granted, because he does know how to push a car. Yeah. However, he would not win 12 races, out of 13, or however, like how many races he's won recently. But he would not win at the rate that he's been winning in a Williams, in an Aston Martin, and in some of the other cars. You know what I'm saying? Like would he win better at a better rate than the drivers of those cars? Yes. Yeah. Would he win at his current rate? No, because the Red Bull car has something to do with it.
But you're right.
I want to be that person in that meme that's sitting in front of the fold-up table and have that on there. Like,
changed my mind. But I think you're right. Like, it could be interesting. Let me finish that thought. You're 100% right. It could be very interesting if they take that car and they have Yuki or Danny Rick or whoever in that car. Would it be 1, 2, 3, 4? My thing is, like, I don't know the rules enough, and I feel like the rules change, but could you just, because it's last year's car, just hand it on over? Do the regulations not apply if that was last year's design? So that's something definitely look into. But I kind of feel like Red Bull is that that team, that person that's like, they're going to look for the loophole, and then they're going to do what they want to do. But they're gonna look for that loophole.
How much is AlphaTauri spending because of the cost cap on the car?
Well, I mean, if they are basically given a car, they've, I mean, maybe they broke the cost cap. We don't know. We won't know that probably till the middle of 2024. But, and I think if they just stay with penalty or monetary penalties for going over the cost cap, then I'm sure AlphaTauri or Hugo Boss or whoever wants to throw in the money would be like, well, we'll just pay the fine. It's fine. We'll deal with it when it comes to it. So could be very interesting. And they could jump from like here in the constructors to like here in the constructors. Like that would be the craziest part. Okay. So those were the main rumors. Summer break, just wanted to share, because I know there might be a lot of people that this might be their first full season, really getting into F1. So during summer break, they always have this time period. The teams are required to take 2 full weeks off. So I think a lot of teams, what they did coming back is they worked last week. So unloading the trucks, making sure everything is good to go. So when you come back from the break, you have everything that you need, right? So I think that's what they did last week. Then they all take 2 weeks off. You can have no development of the car. So there's no working on it, no wind tunnel testing, no looking at data. They can't, they fully shut down their buildings. They can't even look at their emails. It is a full 2 weeks shut down. It's really just a time to relax. So everybody's on the same page, and you don't have some people relaxing and some people working on their cars. It's just a nothing. You
love it.
Yeah.
That's like the European culture, man. You love it. Because there are some laws, there's work labor laws and whatnot in various countries over here. And there's some that you can't answer emails after certain hours. You're not supposed to work certain hours. And I love that. Take a break, take time, spend with your family, disconnect.
Yeah.
Parts fairness of the teams too, but I do like that, showing that relaxation and connection, time with your family is so important.
Yes.
Exactly. It's important.
I think especially for the drivers and the teams, because they're going. I mean,
on the road. I mean, even the pit crews, everybody, they're on the road for so long with their families and everything. I love it.
Yeah, you've got social media teams that travel with them, hospitality, the pit crews, I mean, all of it. And they are going nonstop. So I'm sure they just treasure this time at home. Absolutely. I would. I would totally. I wanted to just kind of share some of the records or accomplishments. This isn't all of them. I got tired and I had to get ready for dinner yesterday. So don't at me if I'm missing something. These were just some of the things. Max Red Bull, obviously, they are breaking records all over the place this season. And I would think that it's probably going to continue through the second half of the season. But some kind of new ones that have come up since the last race. Max and Michael Schumacher are the only 2 drivers in F1 history who have won at least 10 of the first 12 races of a season. So ridiculous. Max is now 4th in the longest podium streak. He's got 13. He's 2 behind Fernando, who has 15. Lewis has 16. And he's 6 behind Michael Schumacher, so he has 19. When you think about how many races are left this season, I think Max is going to be at the top of this podium streak by the end of the season, because unless he DNFs, even then he might still. How many races do we have left? 10. We're 13 and there's 23. So yeah, 10 more.
No, we're at 14 technically because Imola was canceled. So there's 9.
Oh, right. 9 more. Okay. So then, he could totally do it even if he had a DNF.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy. Like in one season, he could obliterate, he could jump from now being the 4th to, to leading that stat.
Can I get Nick Rosberg to take a picture in front of their garage?
They need to. Somebody had a meme about that. Like Checo should be paying Nico to take pictures in front of Max's garage. Red Bull have won all of the 12 races. Like you said, we should have had 13, but Imola was canceled. So they won all 12 races so far this season. That's an F1 record. Fernando had his 100th podium. That was drama because remember on his 100th, they gave him the trophy. They took the trophy away. Then they gave it back. So there was a little drama there. And still we have Fernando, Lewis, and Max, the only drivers to score points in every race this season. So I'd like to see that continue. That's amazing. But I want to know, with this being your first full year watching F1 or halfway through the season, like, what'd you learn? What do you think?
Let's do some people who are online. Let's do some slides now. It's time for some slides.
This would be a good episode to watch us on YouTube because we are switching to some slides where you're going to see a lot of stuff. So yes. Okay, go for it.
Some fun stuff. So first, my fun little word cloud. I learned a lot of nomenclature, a lot about the technology. There's a bunch in the word cloud. This isn't all of them, just people and names, and I listed a bunch of our things like box, chicane. I'm just got a handful of here in alphabetical order. Clean air versus dirty air, the cockpit, which of course I listed that one simply because I went to an aeronautical school to start with, so it was interesting kind of reframing that and the fact that how the driver sits in the car, I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah.
Downforce, DRS, that was one of my first questions to you, if you remember that.
I do.
Dianne, what is DRS?
Yeah.
Part harmony, sectors, side pod. Did you know? And I only learned this today because I was researching some stuff. Because I was like, what is so important about the side pod? Did you know that's where the radiators are?
I don't think I did know that's where the radiators are.
Yeah.
Well, where did Mercedes put theirs when they had no side pod?
I don't know. But there are radiators in the side pods.
I thought it was more about the aerodynamics of it all.
Yeah, but they have radiators in the side pods.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's according to the F1 site. Stewards. I have a lot of thoughts about the stewards.
We all do. Welcome to F1.
A lot of things about the tires, the compounds. I got a slide. I'm going to go to that in just a second. And the degradation of the tires. I am fascinated lately about just all those pictures. In fact, I've gone back, like I mentioned kind of at the beginning here, and started rewatching the F1 series. It's on Netflix simply because the first time I watched it with no knowledge of F1 other than my misconceptions, because I grew up in NASCAR country.
Yeah.
And did not like it because it just was not challenging of my brain enough. I don't want to get people that mad at me because they like F1, but I like NASCAR. But I just got bored of it going around in a circle, and there just wasn't enough for me. Yeah. And I really like the strategy and the technology, and like we were saying earlier, it's the driver and the car and the strategy, and there's just so much to it. And it's not the same car, like you said, Mercedes didn't have side pods, and then they have different side pods and the floor. And it's just like, all of that is so exciting. I should have included floor. How would you include floor?
The floor is important.
The FIA and lack of consistency of rule application. That in itself. Yeah. So my little word cloud here, I had fun turning that into an F1 car. So
I love it. Love it. FIA, I love that is kind of big. I'm just looking like Verstappen, Pole.
Alonso had to be there. Blue is for the blue flag because we haven't got black series yet, but blue flag.
Yeah.
DRS is in there. I don't know why it made it lowercase.
Qualifying. I like that.
Yeah, Grand Prix. Shrall. We talk about Shrall, like grip. You have to grip. Yep.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It separated the words out, this word cloud generator, instead of keeping them together. Like understeer, oversteer is in there.
Oh,
I made sure Ferrari was in there for you.
Bottoming. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Overtake.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. And if you're not on and you're not going to go watch it on the YouTube, it's in the shape of an F1 car. So that makes it even more cool.
The word cloud. I have fun with that. Yeah.
The word cloud is.
All right. So one thing we talked a lot about was the tire compounds. And I think that's something that's really important, and they introduced a new compound this year, and we talked a lot about the slicks and going from hard to soft, and it going from, because I said it wrong in the episode we talked about it, but I'm going to say it now, from white, yellow to red.
Yes.
And then we talked a lot in that episode about intermediates and full wets, but it's only just recently that they used both in the weekend, which was really cool to see. Yeah. And I didn't realize how much it had changed. Now I've got to go back and research it, because I swear in 2018 they had like a pink on the tires. So I've got to go back and look at that. And I don't know what that is, because I was watching this series, so I'm gonna go back and look. But
okay.
Degradation is so fascinating, because
right,
looking at some of those tires recently on the picture, and I want to research and try to learn why some tires and drivers have so worse of a time than others. Why is it that others, they're on the same track, they're driving the same pattern, like why is it some just tear up their tires so much more quickly? Is it literally because of the car, or even a Checo versus a Max in the same car? What is it that's doing it, and how is it that they can learn and do better? So
yeah, I think a lot of it with Max is he's always in the lead, and he's comfortably in the lead, so he's not using up more of his tire fighting with somebody for a position,
Yeah.
And so I think for him that's a huge part of it, for sure. Everybody else is in battles in the back eating up their tires, and he's just sailing along. So yeah, I kind of think that that's a big part of it for Max. But
yeah,
that's
makes
my
sense.
Uneducated non-tire. I don't work for Pirelli, but
Jules, before we get into the next thing, one of the first tires that I splurged on for a car were Pirellis.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I think I have a picture with one of the Pirelli, I don't know what it would be, like drivers, or he was a driver at the time. I was a grid girl one time in San Diego, and I think it was him. I'll have to look for that and see.
Well, my grandfather was a mechanic, and I remember him telling me how good Pirelli tires were. And when I could get good tires for my car growing up as a young adult, I remember buying Pirelli tires.
Aw, that's awesome. Were they good? Yeah. Did they last?
Yeah.
Did they
degrade? Oh, yeah. they lasted. They lasted a good. They did last a good time. So I've had Pirelli tires on my car before.
That's awesome. I love it.
Not that I'll ever own a car again, because I live in Europe. But anyway.
Yeah. But back in the day.
Well,
all
right. Speaking of looking back.
Yes, I did. On my walks, I listened to our first 2 episodes. So it was kind of funny to go back and listen to those. So the first one we talked about like testing and what was happening during testing, and then after the first race of the season. And it was so interesting. I don't know, just kind of like what our predictions were, what people were talking about at the time, and to see where we're at now. So the team, based on testing, I had said that Red Bull and Ferrari were looking the best in testing, and that Red Bull was looking so good it was scary, and like they were going to dominate this season.
You're right.
I was spot on. And I think a lot of that was, people were saying, like, when Max was getting out of the car, like he didn't have a lot of feedback and he just looked, happy. And sure enough, man, that car has been craziness. I did say that Aston Martin and Haas both looked really good. Aston Martin, we know, came out strong at the beginning of the season, so they continued. And I specifically called out Nico and his times. And I feel like that's something else that has been fairly consistent throughout the season, is his 1-lap speed, how he's able to get that Haas, like, up into the different qualifying sessions. So I thought that was pretty funny. And then I also said that Mercedes, that like they would be able to hold their own, but they weren't going to be a top 2 team. And guess who's in second place right now in the constructors? It's Mercedes. So I was completely off on that one. And Ferrari. I was also kind of off on Ferrari. Ferrari is not looking good. But yeah, craziness. We also talked about drivers in those.
Yep.
And so I think you might have little slides, but yeah. So Fernando Hype Train, beginning of the season, and even during testing, I mean, the whole world was on the Fernando Hype Train. Crazy.
Absolutely. And again, going back and watching some of the old Netflix series, 2018, he retired at the end of that.
Yeah.
Or from F1. And I was like, wow, it's really interesting. And I haven't caught back when he came back. Did he come back this year or did he come back last year?
No.
Got a little bit when he came back because that's where he changed seasons, teams and whatnot. But it's interesting, and I don't know. I think of him right now and think, he's been really consistent. He's been supportive, but it's a combination of Aston Martin starting out really strong. They made changes. I'm like, oh, that car's doing really good. They've been really impressed with whatever they did. And they've acknowledged it. They've acknowledged that whatever they did, they screwed up something. They think they know what they did, and they're going to correct it. Okay, if that's the case, if I looked at again, people who are watching, you can see my hands. If I look at the diagram, like, you're doing good, you made some changes, it went down, and now maybe we're going to go back up. Fernando, I feel like he's been holding back. I feel like he's doing the kind of the team player. He's supporting Lance and whatnot. Canada, to me, other than his claim we're going to always be on podium, Canada was the first time I heard him actually be like, guys, I want to win. I can win this. Guys, you're holding me back. And every time else, it's been like, oh, I'm just going to watch the race on the TV as it goes by. And I'm just going to da-da-da. And I'm just here chilling out, man. I'm getting my paycheck and I'm just doing my thing. Like, I don't see the intensity, the urgency to get up there. And maybe that's where he's at, but I just don't see the drive to win so much.
Yeah. I don't know, because I do think they're all super competitive, and I do think he is as well, but I think he's kind of, and maybe this comes with age or something, but I feel like, he's going with it. Like, not that he's not trying. What's that?
I just don't see it in the driving. I mean, maybe it's because of the car, but if I look at the times and when he's been passed or not passing, or the times that he's been second behind Max, it's been like consistent slipping of time. And I get the RB versus the Aston Martin, but I don't know. We don't get to hear the radio. I'm going to start listening to the live radio the whole time during the race and see,
Yeah.
Hype train, a lot of hype. Let's just see if maybe they cut off the rails and it'll kick back in. I adore it. He's still my favorite driver.
Yes, no, totally your favorite driver. I think maybe they just made a stop at the station, and I think when that happened, when they started to kind of go backwards, there was a lot of talk about the Fernando Hype Train is gone, but then they kind of stopped talking about them. You don't, like you said, you don't really hear their radio often anymore, whereas at the beginning of the season, I think they were playing it more and more. There was just a lot going on with Aston Martin. I think he still really wants to win. I think he's still having a great season.
He's adorable, by the way.
He is so adorable. He's just funny. He's funny. I sent you that quote where somebody asked him what he was going to do if he wasn't a driver or when he retires. And he's like, I'm going to be a journalist. Seems the easiest. I was like, he's so funny.
Horrible. He's like the same size as my partner too. Little Hispanic guys. I guess I have a thing for him. He's adorable.
I think you do. I think
my little pseudo niece and I have a lot in common, I think.
That is amazing.
Right. No, then we go into Yuki, your little global treasure.
Oh, my global treasure. So when I was going back and listening to the stuff, I had said it in, I think, both episodes that, Yuki, this was a year he was going to have to prove himself. And again, there was a lot of hype with Nick coming in and, Nick saying he was going to kind of be the leader of the team and, that kind of stuff. And Yuki, they gave him that extra year. They could see some growth. And so they gave him that extra year. And it was like, he has to prove himself this year. He has to step it up. And I think that's exactly what he has done. I loved going back and hearing it's kind of an all or nothing. and then seeing what Yuki's done this year, not only on the track, because we know that AlphaTauri is not great. He's gotten points. He's just many races, even 11th place, just outside the points. He's trying as hard as he can. He outperformed Daniel at the last race. And off the track, it's the same thing. Like to see him step in Imola and out there like shoveling mud and helping, the local residents and all of that stuff. Like he is growing as he should at his age into a great driver and a very wonderful person. Like, and you talk about even Fernando being like so cute. Yuki's the same way. Like there's all these little videos where, I think Nick had asked him like, what's on your bucket list or something? And he's like, I want to eat, I can't remember white rice. And he was like, white rice is on your bucket list? He's like, if that's my last meal, I want white rice. And he's always talking about food. And, he said, I think Nick asked him, what's one thing you can't live without? And he said, love. And it's just like, how can we not love this guy? I just think it's amazing. I can't wait to see what he does the rest of the season. There will be a lot of comparisons between him and Daniel because obviously Daniel is a much bigger name. People love him. I think people want to see him doing well on his comeback, into F1. So I think there is still going to be some pressure on Yuki, but I hope he just goes out there and keeps proving that he is the global treasure that I know he is. That's all I have.
Send that to his PR team.
I love me some Yuki. So other things we had talked about in those first episodes were pairings. So like which pairings were we most excited to see? I don't think you had a lot of knowledge at that time of the supposed feud between Pierre and Esteban. And there's a lot of talk about, are they going to get along? Esteban is kind of known for, sparring on track with his teammates. And I think this year.
And boy, did I see that now that I'm rewatching the things. Holy cow.
Yeah, you're seeing him fighting with Alonso. And last year, oh my gosh, it was stressful watching them sometimes. And I think Esteban will dig into his heels and be like, no, I'm right.
The wrecks between he and Checo in 2018.
Oh, I need to go back and watch that one.
Oh my gosh, like wrecks, like just like literally taking each other out in cars when they were in Force India. It was like, holy cow.
Yeah. So there was a lot of that. And then their history, we all talked about it. Like they were friends when they were little and then something happened and, now they're enemies, but it seems to be fine. I mean, they've had instances where they run into each other. This, was it the last race? No, the race before that. And then in Australia, but those were usually chain reactions, right? Like somebody ran into one of them and then they both went out. So I think like this season, there hasn't been the drama that people were expecting at all with these two. And I do think that they support each other. Like, Pierre, even though the photos when Esteban was on the podium in Monaco, Pierre didn't look too happy, but when Pierre was on the podium for the sprint race, Esteban, said in his thing, like, congrats to Pierre. So I don't think that drama turned out like everybody was expecting it to. And then Fernando and Lance, for me, I thought that was going to be interesting because we could see Fernando was performing really well in testing. He's a world champion. And I thought that it might really shine a light on the fact that maybe Lance shouldn't be in F1. I thought it could make Lance look like not a great driver. And the opposite has totally happened, and I think a lot of it has to do with the car. He's got a good car, but I think that Fernando is helping Lance. I think Lance is learning a lot. And
Lance really showed himself too after like breaking his wrist and coming in and really proving himself in that first race. And
100%.
I think he's coming out and showing that Papa Stroll isn't why that might have some play into why he's driving. It's not the sole reason why he's a driver.
Right. 100% agree. I think that they just seem to bring out the best in each other. And one thing that Mike Crack said is that, as they were trying to figure out what was wrong with their car, he said, these two drivers, they give us so much good information, and they're usually on the same page. Like they've aligned with each other. So they're having talks, talking about, what are you experiencing? What am I experiencing? Here's where we think the problem is. And they bring that to the meetings. And so that is also helping the team, because these two drivers are working together to make the car better. So I love this driver pairing. I think it's awesome. I think it's great. What else? The rookies. Oh my gosh. The rookie I was most excited to watch was Nick DeVries.
Well, you did enjoy watching his body during parts of the season.
I was just saying, all I was saying, like, let's not get it twisted. All I was saying is, like, you look at him and he looks like this skinny little, and then you
He's
see
very
like
physically fit.
The muscle definition is ridiculous on that guy. So that's all I was saying on that. But he was based on what happened with Williams. That's who I was most excited to watch. After the very first race on the podcast, I said I was so disappointed, very disappointed. Yeah. And then I think my second one that I was excited to watch was Oscar, just because of his pedigree. But for you,
it was interesting to see Nick too, because I know I was excited, but I was really, I can't, you just watched it, but like in hindsight, for him to say what he said, that's kind of like set him up for, well, let's see it. Like, come on, baby, let's show me, kind of thing. And right now I'm definitely all over Oscar. He's exciting me.
That's what she said.
What did I say the first 2 episodes? Because I haven't gone back to watch.
No, I'm just saying, you just said you're all over Oscar. He's exciting you.
He's a child. Stop it.
He's legal. Anyway.
I have to mark this for adult content.
No, they're not going to get it. Okay. Anyways, I can't start laughing. I'm going to lose it. For sure, I'm with you on that. Oscar has by far the best rookie the first half of the season. And we're only down to 2. So now it's down to Logan and Oscar. But yeah, I
don't think I can take my McLaren Lego car apart now, because I'm becoming a McLaren fan.
If you take that apart, you're going to jinx the team.
I wonder, did they start going better as soon as I put the car together? I'm thinking
it was right about that time. I mean, I think you had it together just as they were finishing their upgrades and bringing them. So
I'm thinking
you better not touch the car, because those McLaren fans and those Lando Norris girlies will come at you so hard. Don't you do it. Don't you do it. But I think the biggest thing is, I know you've said this before, but I do think that Oscar could be one of the next greats. Yeah. Just watching him off the start when he's been at the top, watching him get in there, the calmness that he exudes when he is, racing before, during, after. There is this steady thing for him, and I agree. I think he's going to be a great driver.
McLaren as a whole, between Oscar and Lando, they've got two. When we'll get to the other driver, they've got some. I'm impressed.
Yeah, very, very much so. Now you've got some race stats for us, right?
Yeah,
which I got some
about. Okay, yeah. All right. Here's some interesting stats. So first off, the first race this season that had all drivers to finish was Miami, that had no DNFs.
That's amazing. And what was that, our fourth race? That
was, let me go look. We had Bahrain, Saudi, Australia, Azerbaijan, Miami, the 5th race.
Okay, so the 5th race. Wow, we had to do 5 races before DNF, no DNF. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And then the race with the most DNFs was Australia, 40%. 8 drivers did not finish. 8. Yeah. That's 40%. However, that is not the race that had the most DNFs in F1 F1. The most one was most retirements was 25 out of 33 starters in the 1951 Indianapolis 500.
Oh my gosh.
Now that's the Indianapolis 500, so that's
that's
a
not
little bit different. But the most
It's
retirement percentage was the 1996 Monaco Grand Prix. 18 out of 21 starters retired. That's 85%, 85.7%.
Oh, I kind of want to watch that.
I know, 1996 Monaco Grand Prix. So mark that down. Go back and watch that. So
I'm going to go watch that. That sounds interesting. So you get podium by default. It's like the speed skating in the Winter Olympics when everybody like slides off the ice.
There's 3 left. There's 3 left. You're going to be podium. Okay, so in Monaco, speaking of Monaco, that's the only race where we've had racers, the people had lapped twice, where the podium and some of the field actually lapped you twice. Because we do have races where the back of the field gets, they don't have the endings like plus so many seconds, whatever. And they're just like, plus one lap. They don't even tell you the time. Monaco, there were several with plus 2 laps.
Interesting. Monaco was crazy this year. I mean, it's always a crazy, I don't know. It's always crazy, but when the rain came, that's very interesting though. Cause I feel like in previous years, we often had at least one driver, looking at you.
And then Ocon. In Bahrain, he has set this record twice this year. In Bahrain, he set it with driving penalties. This doesn't count like parc fermé or like other penalties you might get for changing out your power unit or something like that. So driving penalties. Ocon set it first in Bahrain with 3 in one race. And then he set it in Austria with 5 driving penalties in one race. So the most driving penalties in one race. He said it twice now in this year. 5. Yes.
In 13 or 12 races, really, we've had.
Yeah. So he's not over. And another interesting one I thought, it's called viewers, drivers not classified. And what not classified means is basically NC, meaning it's kind of the equivalent of almost a do not finish. It means that you've completed 90% of the race.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean you completely crossed the finish line, but you completed 90% of the race.
Okay.
Miami counts and Barcelona counts. And so we've had that happen twice this year. And there's been only one other year that's happened twice, and that was in 2016, and it happened in the Chinese and the Japanese Grand Prix, and then it happened in 2021. I messed up when we were talking earlier. 3 times: French, Belgian, and Turkish. And but in 2016 there were 22 starters. 2021 there was 20 starters. So we're on target to tie 2021 if we can get one more like that, and let's see if we can beat it this year because we're halfway through the year and we have 2 of those. Some interesting stats though before we move on. The DNF. There's only Red Bull is the only team that has not had a DNF, has not had a DNF this year. All other 9 teams have had at least 1 DNF. Alpine has had 7 DNFs.
They've had the worst.
Esteban with 4, that's 33% of his races he has DNF. Gasly's had 3, that's 25%. Williams has had 5, 3 with Sargent, 2 with Albon. Haas has had 4, 3 with Magnussen, 1 with Nico. Ferrari has had 3.
Yeah.
2 with Stroll, 1 with Sainz. AlphaTauri, 2 with Nick. Stroll, 2, so Aston Martin 2. McLaren, 2 with Piastri. Mercedes, 2 with Russell. And Alfa Romeo, 1 with Zhou.
Wow.
The most penalties, I talked about Ocon. But interesting for penalty this year, 11 drivers have had at least 1 race with at least 1 driving penalty. 2 teams, no driving penalties. Red Bull and Alfa Romeo.
Wow.
No driving penalties.
I think that's so crazy, though, that Red Bull has 0 driving penalties.
I agree. I agree. So
correct.
All the other drivers have at least 1, with Nico and Logan having 2 races with driving penalties. Sainz has had 3. So he is the driver with the most races with a driving penalty.
Wow.
Yeah. So I thought that was just some interesting stats. We will do this. We'll recap at the end of the year, all similar ones. I'm going to start tracking this just to see how that goes. Because those kind of help me play into who we, with these next couple of things that come up.
Yes.
I needed this to help me answer these next couple of questions. So who we think needs the summer break? I think we both agreed.
Esteban. Okay. Esteban needs the summer break.
I mean, when you get 33% of your races, you couldn't even finish.
Yeah. And then you have a bazillion penalties on top of that. I had said he literally has become a meme with the number of penalties that he has had. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see one of the ones where it's the Simpsons and they labeled him on the ground and everybody's piling on him. And it's like, penalty for being ahead of the box, penalty for speeding in the pit lane. And all the kids are like, stop, he's already dead. Like, that has been Esteban's year this year. And he is in desperate need of a summer break. So I hope
it's interesting. With all of that, he is still 10th in the driver's standing.
Yeah.
After not getting points in 33% of his races for DNF, he is still 10th in the driver's standing with 35 points.
I think that comes down to the podium in Monaco, I think is what that comes down to. That's a nice chunk of points right there for third place.
Yeah, he ended up having 15 points from the one race, 4 points from several races, and 2 points from 2 races.
Yeah.
But
the podium could definitely jump you up, but I hope he's enjoying himself.
I think he needs some zen. He needs to meditate. He needs to get out of his head a little bit. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. And maybe with the changes that are happening, I mean, I don't know that any of this has anything to do with, the team principal or the sporting director, because they have had some, bad luck, which we'll talk about in a second. But, I think that, I don't know if it's on the other people, but he just I hope he's having a good 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah. So that really does to that bad luck. Who are the teams with those? Well, Alpine. I mean, here we go. I mean, we both agreed on this one. And again, you have 7 DNFs between your 2 drivers. 7.
So the worst luck teams, like you said, Alpine 100%. And the fact that they've, been involved in stuff that wasn't really their fault. Chain reactions are happening and they're end up crashing into each other or crashing out. Like, I just think they have the absolute worst luck. And haven't we had some issues early on with like engine stuff? Like their engines caught fire and ridiculous.
On top of the 7 DNFs, remember some that figure about the NCs, so it completed at least 90% of the race.
Yeah.
They have not completed the race. That's an incomplete NC 4 times, the most of any team.
Wow.
So that's the, that's just,
Yeah.
So that because you can DNF and if you've completed at least 90%, so of those 7 DNFs, 4 of them happened before they completed 90% of the race. So they didn't get a placement.
Right.
So they DNF so early on, like in Australia.
Yeah.
And so they DNF so early on in 4 of the races. They didn't even get a placement in the race because they DNF so early.
Oh my goodness gracious. That is ridiculous. I also had Haas on there. I just feel like Haas is one of those unlucky teams. They've had some issues with the cars. They've had, I don't know, like even just coming out of the pit lanes, they're just constantly like unlucky.
And I was going to say Haas until I started rewatching part of this thing today, and I'm like, I don't know if it's that, if it's management, if it's just their own what they're doing wrong. But then I kind of looked at Williams a little bit too. I was kind of on the fence. I just wanted to pull them as just another one to call out because I think they've had some luck issues. Because Sargent, I think, has been performing and trying to perform, but he has been hit with some mechanical things, and he has been hit with a few things that I feel like he's just always been there, and then something's kind of taken him out. And even Albon has been pretty close, or so another car has hit him and taken him out, and they've just had a couple of luck things because they've been slowly eking in there, and then something just seems to not go their way. So that's why I wanted to throw Williams in there, is because they seem to be the little team that could. They're I don't know. I think luck is every once in a while knocking them down.
I 100% agree with you on that. In this last race, they could not understand why they did as poorly as they did. And James Valls said that I think he was saying it was on both cars, but in the pits, something like the brake, not disc, but he said some teams call them like cake pans, or I don't know. There's a part in there, and supposedly they got broken. And so that was causing their tires to degrade faster than what they expected. So, I mean, it sounded a little like, what? But if that's true, that also goes into the, just being unlucky. Your team should have done better there, but something weird happens to a part in a pit stop that, causes the rest of the race to go to, Williams. They'll get there. They are trying. I like that they never quit.
Then we go to the flying under the radar, which it leads me into Williams. There's some stats I'm going to show later that kind of supports why I kind of am saying this. But Williams, at the same time, they're eking up. I mean, they actually have 11 points, and they've been talking about the last couple of years, if they could just get points, if they can get some points. They're not in last place.
Nope.
Williams is not in last place, people. I mean, that's where they've been playing. If you look, they're kind of eking up into the middle. I mean, they're not in last place. They've actually been getting a few scores. And I think if Sargent, and he's a rookie, but if Sargent had not had a couple of these, series of, unfortunate events hitting, he might actually have gotten a couple of points out of it as well. And I just think they're one that we're just not seeing enough light into, and just a couple more things go their way, and we might be seeing a little more out of it. Because that Williams car, I think, is a little better than we're giving it. Again, earlier, you put Max in that Williams car, Williams would be doing better.
Yeah.
You put Alonso in the Williams car, you put even Lando in the Williams car, you put a little more seasoned in there, and maybe they need to give it a little more money behind that car to get just a little more oomph into it. I think they're going in the right direction. From the last couple of years, I think they're finally becoming more competitive.
Yeah, I think that they absolutely are going in the right direction. I think Alex Albon is a really good driver. I mean, Red Bull wanted him back, and he said no, because he really believes in what Williams is doing and what James is doing. And again, like you just said, if they get a little bit more money behind them, if FIA or F1 listens to what James is saying, give these smaller teams a bigger cost cap, because they are one of the teams that has to send out, carbon for cutting and, that kind of stuff. Like, maybe if they had a little bit more money, they would be doing well. And I fully agree with you about Logan. There's been times where he probably should have been up into Q2, Q3, but he had, a track time deleted. It's rookie things. It's unlucky things that's happening with the car. I think I had a slightly different take on like teams flying under the radar. And for me, I said Alfa Romeo, because I just feel like there's not a lot of talk about them. They're just kind of a team I often forget about, and they're not doing horrible and they're not doing great. And they've had some races where like Bottas has been up there, or like Joe, when he, qualified in whatever place it was, 4th or 5th. But then had an issue with his car as soon as the lights went out. So I took it more kind of that way, is like, they're just kind of there. Nobody's really talking about them. They're not doing great. They're not doing horrible. They're just kind of existing at this point. And yeah, there's no scrutiny on that team at all. So yeah, hopefully they'll start.
I think that's good. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Red best driver so far. I mean, it hands down, it's Max. I mean, he's seasoned, and it was interesting again going back and looking at the Netflix series and seeing when he was up and coming in 2018, and learning and whatnot. It was. I have to say that it was a kind of a good pivotal moment for me going and looking at that because I noted that that's kind of when I I realize now why I started to not like him, and a lot of it had to do with, well, we know how Ocon is, but
Yeah.
they showed him like shoving him and calling him. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to have to mark explicit language on another
Yeah.
thing. But oh, he didn't apologize to me. He was laughing at me when we were waiting, and then he says in a press conference, "I'll headbutt someone if I get more questions about this." I'm like,
Oh my God.
excuse me. And then the FIA did not give him any grief, and we've seen another driver get like grief because of something they said in a presser. And I'm like, this is a little ridiculous, and I get because he's got a lot of talent, and I get that. I totally get that he has talent. I have a hard time with what I feel is sometimes preferential treatment, or that kind of thing. But yes, he is a very talented, hands down, phenomenal driver in a phenomenal car.
Yes.
This isn't NASCAR where everyone drives the same cars. You cannot do a driver to driver comparison when you're not in the same car. All I gotta say. So I added, before you add your 2 cents, I added little Mr. Lando here because I think he is showing some hellacious driving. Now that his car has had some upgrades, it's really showing. But if I go back and I see what he was doing in some of the previous races before the car was up there, he was making some strides. He was showing some up there and some talent and some skill, and he's quietly eking up there. And I think he is somebody, along with Piastri, I just didn't put him there as being a rookie, is another driver we need to keep some eyes on.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I think Lando can be an underrated driver, and he is good. I mean, what has he had now? 8 podiums. I mean, with his podium this recently, I think he's up to 8 or 9. He's a very good driver. And I think finally they're giving him a car that he can drive. I definitely had Max as my best driver so far this year. You cannot discount the way he has controlled that car, the records that he's breaking. Yes, it's a whole thing. It's the car, it's the strategy, it's the driver, and Red Bull is clicking on all levels with Max. So definitely my best driver so far.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's obvious. He's obviously the best driver. It's one of those things is we're going to always see is with any sport, you're going to see records be broken, and as athletes get better, and when you have a sport where technology is part of the sport and it's not pure just physical endurance, you're going to continue to see records get broken. So we keep comparing him like Schumacher and Lewis and all this kind of stuff. He's going to eventually break a lot of these records, but then someone else is going to come along and break his too, because as the car technologies get better, and as it's like Moore's law in computers, that every 18 months technology kind of doubles in its capabilities. It's just going to continue to get better. I know I paraphrased that wrong for my techie geeks out there, but just kind of trying to set a point here that we are, each decade, I think over the next couple decades, we're going to see records continue to get broken. And so Max is great. He is our best driver that we have during this current era, or this current decade right now, I should say era. But in the coming years and decades, we are seeing others come up. 10 years from now, it'll be different. 20 years from now, it'll be different. So enjoy the Max hype now. It's not going to, the records won't stand. They just won't. And they'll be broken quicker than Schumacher's were broken.
Yeah.
And
it could be Oscar that does it. So It could be. It could be.
All right.
Okay, the driver struggling the most so far. Oy.
Oh,
So I have Logan for all of the things that you said before. He's just had a lot of unlucky situations. The photo, if you're watching on the YouTube, is from, I think it was the last race, and he had to retire right towards the end. Had to retire the car. He just has had some unlucky instances. And, I think he keeps a positive mindset, even though there's been quite a few. I did also add Checo to this because with the car that, the RB19, he's been struggling. I mean, how many times did he miss Q3? There was several races, 4 or 5, I don't even remember, 6, like a lot. So he's been struggling with that car. He's had a lot more mechanical issues with his car than Max has. Like, there's been a lot. And yes, granted, he's won 2 races. Max has won 10. He's won 2. And he's been able to get his car up into the points, but he's just been struggling overall. So those were my 2 that
and I agree with you on Checo, and Logan I didn't put up there because he's a rookie and I kind of expected it. Just your note on Logan, his a DNF twice, so one of them he considered 18th. So his finishes have been highest is 11th, a 13th, then a 16th, a 17th, 2 18ths, and 2 20ths.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's had some rough stuff, but and if you look at Checo, which I think is an interesting one, because I did include Checo in mine, simply because it's right where you've had to stay on things too. I agree. And I might have scrolled up. I think I missed a couple of Landos. I'll have to go back to that. But Checo, like I said, he's 1, 2. He's been on the podium several times, but he's got a 16th finish.
Yeah.
He finished 16th in one of them, so he missed points out on one. And then he's got several spots where he got single digit points, like a 9 point and an 8 point because he finished, 6th.
Yeah.
So that's kind of weird for him. But I put Carlos up there, and I know that was kind of shocking for you because he's your guy.
It was very shocking.
But the main reason why I did is he's got the most races with penalties, 3.
Mm-hmm.
He's this is his, from what I can count, his 3rd team since 2018, because he was on Renault and then he went to McLaren, and I think he went from McLaren to Ferrari, right?
Yeah.
And then, he's got Charles all over him, and you hear the strategists and the team really seeming to put Charles ahead of him and whatnot. And now I'm starting to think, now that I'm kind of rewatching this series, has Carlos found a team that believes in him and that clicks with him and really prioritizes him?
Yeah,
right?
I don't think so.
And recognizes his genius and recognizes his strength. And that's why I put him up there as a struggle, because 3 races with driving penalties, right? For a seasoned driver, and fighting with your strategist so often, year over year. And he's been with Ferrari for a bit now, but he doesn't seem to be their priority. And
he's not. Leclerc is definitely their priority. He's got the longest contract ever for a driver at Ferrari. That is their number 1 person. And probably because of that, they have to prioritize him. And it doesn't look good. This is Carlos's 3rd season with Ferrari. And his 1st season, he beat Charles in the points, in the championships. So, last season, Charles did better, but there were many races where Carlos was doing better. So, Carlos is in there fighting for it, but they will always prioritize Charles. They just will.
So I just feel like I don't think he's found his home.
Not yet.
Yeah. And I feel like that it's really evident this year. And that's why I put him down, is that he's struggling. It's not that he's not performing. I just think that he doesn't have the team support.
Yeah.
He has an engineer that seems to fight with him every race. And he seems to have to be a loner on his own. And I mean, like, one of those penalties wasn't his fault. It was his engineer, right? And but then he suffers for it. So at least one of them, if not more. So yeah, that's why I threw him out there. I was shocked when I did that analysis and saw that he had 3.
Yeah, that's a
races.
lot, especially for him.
Yeah,
that's for him. Yeah,
now you understand. Now you understand.
I get it.
All right, most improved team. We're over an hour. Sorry, folks.
I know. We got to just get. I thought this was going to be a short, light.
There's so much to talk about, though. This is really cool. It's really cool reflection.
Yes,
it's the summer. Most improved team. Who can argue this? McLaren.
Yeah,
holy cow.
McLaren. So at the beginning of the season, based on their testing, we all thought they were going to finish the constructors ninth or 10th place, and all of a sudden, they told us that the upgrades were going to start coming in. I don't remember Baku. It was Baku. And they've been bringing the upgrades nearly every race. And oh my goodness, starting in Silverstone, did that show up?
Absolutely. And if you would have asked me this question week 2 or 3, I'd be like, oh, I'm in the summer, I'm going to say Aston Martin because it's amazing. And then they twerk themselves down and but they claim to get better, but definitely McLaren. They kind of just slowly went up and then. So I'm excited to see what happens for them.
And they literally went from being called, having an orange tractor on the grid. I mean, Danny Ricciardo in Australia driving an orange tractor because he was with McLaren and drove the internet crazy, to being on the podium in Silverstone is hands down most improved team.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Best one-off livery. You all know I love a one-off livery, and it absolutely goes to the Williams car that they ran in Silverstone for their 800th Grand Prix. It's just beautiful. It's so beautiful.
It is. It's so cool what they've done. They've got some really good creatives. I love that they kept I love what they do with the Duracell battery, I have to tell you, but everything else about it is really cool. They're brilliant. They're quite brilliant.
They really are. The 800 is prominent on there. The back half with the, Union Jack is spot on. I wish they would run this livery the rest of the year, except when they do the golf livery, which is coming up. Because I can't wait to see the golf livery. I'm still waiting for the merch to come out for that one. I'm not missing out this time. Not. I'm just not. Let's see what's next. A feel-good finish so far this year. I had a tie. Mine was a tie. Alex Albon finishing P7 and driver of the day in Canada. I was emotional. Loved to see it. I love Alex Albon. I love Williams, and for them to come out and for him to drive that race the way that he did, and then get driver of the day, amazing. And then also tied was Oscar being P2 in the sprint in Belgium. So excited for him. A rookie on the podium. Again, that car making such a comeback. Incredible. Absolutely. Feel good finishes for me.
Yeah, and I agree. The Oscar getting that was amazing. I love that one, so I couldn't disagree on that one. I have to tell you, just Lando getting P2 in Hungary, that's when McLaren's just shooting up there, and he was just so calm and cool about it, and so humble and appreciative of the team, and just showing that class of where this kid is going. And that's what I was like, I got to start noticing this team. I've got to start noticing this car, because he shows that he's going to be a class act,
Yeah.
So that's why I had to throw him in there. Look at the orange, man. Look at the orange showing up from a different team.
I love it. Most exciting race so far. So I had Australia. Just because, the drama that happened in Australia was such a long race. All the stuff that was happening at the end with the crashes, and you had people completely out of order as far as points go. I said the hot mess race, Austria, all the track limit violations, and then the what was it, 4 or 5 hours after the race, reclassification of everybody, like just a hot mess, but I had to throw that one in there. But most exciting, I think, I don't know, the last couple races though, well, not the last race was kind of boring. Some of the last races, just when you take them as a whole, like for the weekend, the qualifying, all of that stuff, have been really good.
Yeah, I think the qualifying has been exciting. I think the drama around the trophy being taken away from Fernando and then given back to him for his 100th, the kind of the oddness around the rules have been interesting. But I want to, before we get into the Beyond Grid, I want to show this last little thing I did about the race excitement and whatnot. I did a quick just rundown of how each number of drivers have placed for each constructor this season so far. So what we're looking at is each constructor and how many places that they've had for each place. So Red Bull, they've had 12 first place finishes for the 12 races, right?
Yeah.
And that's how you read it. So what I find is interesting, what you and I are talking about for Mercedes, except for their 2 that were actual DNFs that they come in as an NC because they did not complete at least 90% of the race. Nothing below P8. And you were saying they still are even right now talking about, oh, we should be performing better, blah, blah, blah. Hello.
Yeah. You're second in the constructors by quite a bit now, I think, over Aston Martin. And it is interesting to see, like, even at the beginning of the season when they were doing horrible, they still haven't finished lower than 8th. So it's kind of crazy. You guys are, I mean, I know they want to be number 1. They want to be where Red Bull is, right? With 12 first place finishes. That's where they want to be, but they're not doing horrible, especially when you look at some of the other teams. And Ferrari, we've got some out of the points because penalties that, were applied after the fact. So, yeah.
And then you get your 3 NCs, so 3 that are DNFs or just didn't complete the 90%. So that's this last column. We've had 20 racers that did not finish there's more DNFs, but these are the ones that did not complete at least 90%. So they did not get a placement in the grid for the finishing.
Yeah.
So 2 20th, 4 19th, 10 18th, 12 17th, and then that's when we start that we've at least 17th or more, right? Wow. I think it's interesting. I thought it was interesting to see Williams, like we talked about earlier, they have at least 11 points. You can see where they got those, and Alfa Romeo. But Aston Martin, have a couple out. But Haas has got a few up there in the points. So I thought it was just interesting to look at it this way, and I'll keep watching this and then use it at the end of the year just to see where the teams, how they scored their points, because you can kind of see if they scored their points.
Yep. I love that. I think it's kind of interesting to see it that way. Well, let's do Beyond the Grid real quick. So actually this morning, excuse me, Susie Wolf posted their summer break so far. And the very last picture was Toto with his left arm all in a cast. And I guess he must have broke it doing some downhill biking. So I don't know if he's trying to be the next Valtteri Bottas or if that's something that he does regularly, but didn't look like it turned out real well on that. Not so much. Yuki announced that he has his own launch of his own clothing brand. It's available in Japan now, but by the end of the year, it will be available for shipping globally. So I'm super excited because I will totally buy one of those. It's got like his number, the 22, kind of a little bit sort of maybe abstracty, and the leaf. So if you see his helmet, it's got like these leaves on it. And so it's got the leaf on it as well. So be on the lookout for that. And then Max, which I think we might have talked about this a little bit, just what his future plans are for racing. Like he doesn't plan to be in F1 forever and ever. But he is starting a racing team for GT3. So that's Grand Touring. It's a Grand Touring racing car. They do, different races under the FIA. And they're thinking that it will start around 2025. So supposedly he has said it's past the planning stage. They're like in an action stage. So I don't know if that's they're building the car or they're building the team, trying to figure out what to do there. But I mean, Max is already starting to make moves on his future. So there you go.
Well, Might be on the grid as I entered to try to win F1 Manager 23, and I didn't win.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a game, but I didn't win.
I'm sorry about that. That sucks.
ESPN tweeted about it, and I entered to win, but I didn't win.
Well, that just stinks. That stinks. So next week we were going to do the Williams deep dive this week, but we decided let's do some of these fun things. So we'll do that next week, and then we're going to talk about a little bit about silly season. There's been a whole bunch of rumors about all these pre-contracts, and so we're going to just talk about all of them. Probably most of them are not accurate, but there was one I saw yesterday that I think for sure could be very accurate. It's not the first time I've seen the rumor. So we will start talking about silly season and what it might look like on the grid in years to come. So,
well, this has not been our longest, so it wasn't so bad. Hour and 20. So thank you all. I think it was worth it. Lots of fun stuff, lots of neat reminiscing for halfway through. So thank you all. Thank you, Diane.
Yeah, thank you.
I feel like I'm much more learned now, so I'm excited for the second half.
I love it.
Thank you all for coming along from the ride. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and a review. To stay up to date with She Loves the Grid and get all the behind-the-scenes content, you can follow us on Instagram at She Loves the Grid and on Facebook at facebook.com/She Loves the Grid. Thank you for joining us for the ride this week.